All right, welcome everybody to the February 16th Kubernetes community meeting. I'm Paul Morey and I will be your host today. So first up, we have a demo that's quick Kubernetes on bare metal, AWS, and GCE from Jorge and Marco. You guys have the floor. Feel free to share your screen.
Awesome, thanks. We got involved in the Kubernetes community in October, and we just wanted to take some time to show off our stuff and what we've been working on. So with that, Marco's gonna go ahead and kick in the demo.
Marco, we can't hear you if you're saying something.
Yes, the mute button. That's it's a good thing to have unchecked. Cool. So I'm just going to run through kind of Kubernetes is something we've been focusing on, from how to operate, deploy, manage, and install just upstream Kubernetes, nothing special or flavorful on top of it. So we've been using a lot of existing tools to kind of leverage standing up Kubernetes clusters really quickly, but we realized that installing Kubernetes clusters is only half the battle. Really, the long tail battle is what it's like to manage and maintain the lifecycle of those clusters over time. So a lot of our efforts have been around how do we do that repeatably, reliably, and manageably across not just the public clouds like Amazon, Google's compute engine, Azure, and Rackspace, and all those guys, but also down into how do I do this on my own private cloud, whether that OpenStack or VMware, or even directly straight onto bare metal. And in a way that's consistent, so that if I do this on Amazon and I do this on bare metal, I get the same result, the same pieces, no crazy differences between those things. So we use something called Conjure Up as a way to help guide the user to the initial deployment section. So Conjure Up itself actually runs a bunch of different we call them big software installations, but things like big data clusters, Kubernetes, and OpenStack. So I'm just going to kind of walk through what it looks like to deploy a Kubernetes cluster. I'm going to use an existing cloud I've configured, but I could go and literally do this against anything from AWS to Azure, Cloud Sigma, Google, Joint, Rackspace, or I could configure my local laptop to do a deployment, or I can configure bare metal to do a deployment. I'm actually going to use an existing cloud because it'd be a little quicker for the demonstration purposes. And from here, let's just say we'll do this on Google. From here, I can actually go and change the architecture. By default, we try to match what upstream Kubernetes recommends for architecture. So you have easy RSA, which gets you the PKI, TLS encryption, and security in your cluster. That'll do certificate generation for etcd, for the Kubernetes masters, the workers. So for kubelet, for kubeAPI serve and everything, we'll all have the same shared certificate. It'll be a valid certificate from a CA authority that's being deployed in the environment. You could also do things like modify the architecture. This is just a kind of a small 3-node cluster, so if you lose one node, you'll still be able to chug along. A single cluster and multiple workers, which are Kubernetes nodes that run kubelet, Docker, or Rocket, or whatever it happens to be. But you can go through and change this architecture. Say I want multiple masters. We use a HA proxy load balancer in order to provide actual full HA of the control plane to the workers as well as to the client connecting. I'm just going to go ahead and deploy all of these right now. But what this will do is it will use the underlying cloud APIs to provision the hardware. So in this case, it'll go to Google's GCE, the API there. It'll boot up a bunch of Google instances and deploy all of those components onto there, configure them. This is Kubernetes from the upstream repo. It's the upstream binaries that are packaged as part of each release. We follow the same release schedule. So about 4 or 5 days after upstream release, and it's been embedded in our install process, we have them available for installation. And then this will run, it'll take a few minutes because, cloud's got to pull some resources up and it's got to put some bins on disk and stuff. I want to show you what it looks like when you already have a cluster running. So I went ahead and ran a cluster earlier. I think it's here. Here. Well, it's in the process of being stood up. So this is kind of what it looks like during an installation phase where I've got 3 machines. They're being stood up right now. I've got those same components installed. Easy RSA for TLS. I've got etcd. Just a single node of etcd in this cluster, something nice and small. I've got Flannel for the SDN overlay. I've got Kubernetes worker and master, the node and the API server. This took a few seconds to finish converging, but I wanted to talk about kind of interoperability as well. Because of the way that things like Conjure Up and Juju model deployments, it makes it super easy to interchange components. So for instance, we have Flannel today, but At any time, you could say, I want to use Calico instead of Flannel, or Flannel and Calico in the case of deploying on Azure with Calico. All of those kind of deployment options are available for you to make choices during the configuration portion of that architecture, swap things out for other things. And because this is a live model, what's great about the way we model things is you can actually go and manipulate the model over time. So for instance, you could say something like, well, today I only have one worker and one master, but if I wanted to, I could say something like, Juju, add me an additional unit of Kubernetes worker. And what that'll do is literally go live provision you another instance and make sure it's added to the same connections that are there before. So it's got the right TLS certificates, the CA root, the public CA root to validate certificates. It'll be connected to etcd and to the API master so that all those pieces are in place and configured appropriately. So we're able to do things like lifecycle operations, like scaling up and down, adding new Kubernetes nodes with different labels. So if you want to do a bunch of GPU clusters alongside maybe more generalized compute, you could deploy those and configure those clusters individually, but still have them be modeled in the same way. And we could leverage things like also doing cluster validation using Kubernetes EDE methodology. So for each of our clusters, this one's still turning up, but I'll switch to an existing one as well. So we'll just see, I think I have another model running. I've got a slightly older version of Kubernetes running here. This is 151. But I could go and run things like upgrade this to 152. I could take operational actions that are required in order to keep maintenance on this thing. And I can also just go ahead and kick off EDE tests. So right now, my EDE runner here is saying it's blocked because it's missing a connection to the master. If I switch to this here, we can kind of see what that looks like. So this is kind of what that model in command line looks like as a graphical interface. And what I need to do is tell the EDE worker, for instance, how to connect to the master to get credentials so it can do an end-to-end run. So I could just say something as simple as Juju add a relation from Kubernetes E to E over to Kubernetes master. Oh, no. I have to spell things right. And if we look at this, if we watch the status here, we'll see that what will happen is because this is a distributed event system, it's kind of managing the events that are going on within the system here. It'll execute that, hey, you guys have a connection to each other. You should exchange information. It's a predefined channel, that exchange of information. So Kubernetes master will pass it over a client certificate as well as the kubectl configuration that it needs to configure. And now we see that it's ready to test. So we can actually just go kick off conformance tests against this cluster in a repeatable fashion. So I can just say, well, see what actions I can do on this. I can do a test action. So I just say Juju run an action on this node test. And that'll queue off a test and I can watch its status. And then within 5-10 minutes, this will run standard performance, but I could modify the parameters to run flake test or parallel test or whatever happens to be for the EDE stuff. And because we're using things with modeling, this whole process, this whole procedure, this whole idea of configurability and the idea that you can just swap components out and stuff is available across that entire suite of substrates. So I just did this on Amazon and on Google, but the same set of primitives are available on every public cloud, as well as private clouds like VMware and OpenStack, as well as bare metal. I don't want to run too late. I know I have about a minute left, so I don't know if there's any questions. Otherwise, I'll just wait for this EDE test to run.
So there's a question in the chat about if this is usable on any non-Ubuntu operating system.
Yeah, so we have all the operations tailored for Ubuntu, but the tools we're using for this aren't solely mapped to Ubuntu. So for bare metal provisioning, for deploying workloads with things like ConjureUp and Juju, they're not tied to Ubuntu in any fashion. You can use CentOS. You could do it on top of even Windows. We have a lot of things that do Windows workloads, like Active Directory deploys alongside Linux workloads. We just happen to target Ubuntu because that's the thing we know the best, being the company behind Ubuntu. But our tooling is not limited to any of those things, the things we chose for this solution.
I think the raw bare requirement is you need cloud in it.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so the minimum operating system requirement is this cloud and it's installed to pass user data over through there. Other than that, there's no real limitation to the operating system or distro you choose to use.
And if there's no questions, that's pretty much it. We hang out on SIG On-Prem and SIG Lifecycle. So thank you very much for having us.
All right, thanks for the demo.
Yeah.
So next up, we got release updates. First up is 1.6. Dan Gillespie, you have the floor.
Good morning, everyone, or good evening, depending on where you are. So this week we put out Alpha 2 of 1.6. And later this week, or potentially early next week, we're actually going to put out Alpha 3, specifically because it includes enabling CRI, which is a major operational change. So we want to give vendors as much time as possible to be able to validate it and ensure that clusters aren't disrupted. So in the big win of the week, we built the release team. Thank you everyone for stepping up. It's super exciting. I'm really excited to move forward with this release. And yeah, thank you for everyone whose names are there. And the last update on the release, we really need to start getting all of the release notes in. We're going to start sort of grouping them up a little bit. But just sort of low-hanging fruit right here, I put a link to all the PRs that need to have release notes with them that have been merged. So that's sort of just like things that we can immediately start working on. So if everyone wants to just take a look at there, and if there's anything that they're familiar with, and then we're going to start picking people probably as we get closer to code release. Cool. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thanks, Dan. Next up is 1.5. Saad Ali, you have the floor.
Thanks, Paul. So 1.5.3 went out Wednesday morning. It was a few days after planned. We were planning to do it last Friday. It got delayed because of the GitHub issue link there. There were some OS images that got updated that caused a bunch of CI to start failing, so we didn't have a good signal and couldn't cut on time. That got resolved by Tuesday, and so we cut on Wednesday morning. Other news is that Marcin from the Warsaw team here at Google will be taking over the 1.5 branch. So I am no longer going to be doing the cherry picks. It will be Marcin. And that's all.
All right, great. Next up is 1.4. Jess, are you on? There we go.
Pretty much the same thing. It went out yesterday morning, super early. And we had to revert like the GCI fixes, and then we'll probably be merging in another fix and then cutting another release, but everything else is in the release on 4.9 that went out yesterday.
Awesome. Okay, that does it for release updates. Next up is SIG updates. First is SIG On-Prem with Tomaj and JJ.
So hello everyone. I'm not sure if Jay is here, probably not. He's traveling. So this is our first update, as we are relatively new SIG. So for those of you that are not familiar, we are mainly focused on running Kubernetes outside of cloud providers, more specifically on-premise. So we started a couple of weeks ago. We have all the stuff set up, videos, mailing list meetings, etc. We ran 3 meetings so far. Videos are available on the YouTube playlist. We had pretty good participation ratio from like 20 up to, I think, more than 40 people at the initial meeting. So we started some work already. Specifically, we started analyzing the Kubernetes state on-premise. To do that, we're running regular demos of existing solutions for on-premise Kubernetes. We had 2 so far, and I think like 3 in the queue. Then we will use this as an input for the document that we want to create, which is a quick start guide for Kubernetes on-premise, identifying some areas that need special attention when you're running on-premise. What's provided, what's not provided, what are the configuration differences between cloud providers and on-premise, etc. And we'll be also trying to identify some work and features that we could drive through the SIG, but I think that for now it's a little bit too early. We're kind of still defining ourselves, so probably 1.7 timeline, we will have some work that will be driving through the SIG. And that's pretty much all from me. Thank you, everyone.
It helps if you unmute. Thank you for the update. Next up is SIG-Federation, Christian Bell. Do we have Christian?
We do.
Hey,
Okay.
I'm one of the co-TLs on Federation, so the update I have for you this week is that I'd say the last two meetings we've set new attendance records with more and more people joining in, asking questions. Still a lot development focused, so a lot of people are worried about the end-to-end testing because it's taking a long time to test. Ideally, we'd like to move all of our testing as Blocker into Jenkins, but the turning cluster up and down is taking a bulk of the time. So we're having to balance new users who want new features with existing stabilization. The 1.6 target goals are to stabilize the existing APIs and not introduce any new APIs. However, there is some good external pressure from people just coming in and proposing different ideas like cluster-based selection, label selection. You've seen this demo from Concur at the last KubeCon, and also open policy agent as a mechanism to place different federated resources. So that's currently being reviewed. In terms of who's contributing, Red Hat has stepped up recently a lot to ask good questions, clean up a lot of technical debt that's been accumulated over the last year of development. But the other players that are in the trenches is mostly around testing for this cycle. So hopefully we'll have a more robust product for the 1.6 release timeframe with less caveats. Yep, that's it for me.
All right, great. Thanks. Next up is SIG-OpenStack. Steve Gordon.
Yep. Okay, just a couple of quick things from us today. So there has been some discussion on the mailing list for folks who are interested around the mission and scope of SIG-OpenStack. What that comes back to is that a lot of the discussion so far has been driven by contributions to Kubernetes on OpenStack. Some of the folks working on OpenStack deployment using Kubernetes felt like their discussions were excluded or out of scope for the SIG, and it was probably a good time, about 12 months on from starting the SIG, to reevaluate the mission. So we're going through that process at the moment. The other thing, one of our goals for this year is to make sure that we have E2E federated testing coming from one or more OpenStack clouds. So Chris Hoge from the OpenStack Foundation has secured some OSIC resources in the short term. So those who are not familiar, the OSIC cluster is pretty similar setup to the CNCF cluster for community project use, donated by Intel. So we have some resources, a small couple machines on that until at least June to work on getting things set up. And then beyond that, we're either going to negotiate an extension of that, or we're going to find another location to host those jobs to have that federated testing reporting in. The other thing that was discussed in a previous community meeting, so the OpenStack Summit is coming up in Boston. There is a Kubernetes Day, so Craig McCluskey and a couple other people had put in the relevant paperwork in time for that to happen. Igor is going to take the lead on that, and there's going to be a separate CFP for that opening on Feb 20, with some more details to come on that in the near future. So that'll be effectively a Kubernetes dedicated day within the OpenStack Summit event. And the final piece I wanted to highlight, so for anyone who did submit a Kubernetes-related presentation to the OpenStack Summit general tracks, the community voting for those is now live. So you can go in there and search Kubernetes and find out what people have submitted if you're interested in doing that. If Igor's on the line, do you have anything else?
Not so many updates from me. So as you mentioned, Kubernetes Day will happen during the OpenStack Summit at the beginning of May. So we are currently discussing and finalizing the stuff regarding it with CNCF and OpenStack Foundation. So please stay tuned. All the official information will be announced later. Speaking about the community voting for the general session, I'm also aware that there are lots of Kubernetes-related talks going to be presented at OpenStack Summit. So if you're interested in attending OpenStack Summit and you'd like to hear some extra talks regarding OpenStack and Kubernetes in any way, how they collaborate together, so please go via the link that is already in the meeting notes and upload some talks. That's all from me. Paul?
All right, great, thank you. So next up is Brendan Byrnes, Kubernetes survey update. We have Brendan.
I haven't seen him yet, so I just pinged him on chat. So we may not be able to get an update from him.
Well, it's a good thing you're not muted because you are next with CNCF, Committer Governing Board seats.
Oh, I am next, yes. So the Cloud Native Compute Foundation wants to expand the governing board to include developer seats from the projects. They want to put 2 seats on the board, and they want to make sure that there is representation from the projects directly, not just the companies who are contributing to the foundation. So the executive director, Dan Cohn, asked me to come up with a list of 5 to 10 people that we think of as leaders in the organization. He said, what we really want are the people who have commit bits. And in a project as large as ours is, we have several of those, we have a lot of those. And that actually ended up overwhelming the other projects and the numbers of maintainers and committers that they have. So we wanted, since we're going to be choosing these developers from a pool that is across all of the 5 or 6 projects, I think it's 6 now that are in the CNCF. He wanted to limit that to 5 or 6 people. So since we've set up all of this governance work and all of the owners and reviewers and approvers lists, I recommended that we use the top level owners because that's 8 people and it's about half non-Googlers, which continues to be a thing that we work toward improving, but I thought it represented fairly well a way that we as a community have already agreed that these are our top level project leads and that they are a pretty representative sample across the company or across the project. So my question to you all is, does that seem like a reasonable pool to draw our governing board seat members from?
It seems reasonable to me personally.
Yeah.
Whatever that's worth.
Anyone else have thoughts or concerns or want to know more about what this looks like?
I'm seeing +1s in the chat.
Agreed.
Real quick, Sarah, there's the governing board and then there's the technical board,
Technical
right?
Oversight Committee, yep.
Yeah, and can you give everybody sort of just like the 1 sentence sort of breakdown of responsibilities across that stuff?
Sure. The governing board is focused on the membership and governance of the foundation. So it isn't particularly any sort of project governance. It isn't any sort of direct engagement necessarily with the technical projects. It's focused on marketing cloud native as a concept, promoting the work and the ideas of how cloud native is going to make everyone's lives better. Let me see if I can pull up the mission very quickly of the whole organization, because we were just discussing this yesterday.
I don't want to derail stuff. I just think it's interesting to split up between those because I think
right.
Just to make sure everybody's on the same page here.
So the Technical Oversight Committee, I'll go down the Technical Oversight Committee as well. The Technical Oversight Committee is focused on the projects that are being brought in. So the governing board has no say on which projects are brought into the foundation or how those projects are governed. The Technical Oversight Committee has limited oversight as to how the projects are governed. They can recommend things, but there's nothing short of the Apache license that is actually required by the foundation for projects to join. There are, the Technical Oversight Committee has to, or chooses projects that people apply. The projects are discussed on the public Technical Oversight Committee meetings that are happening, I believe most Wednesday or every other Wednesday morning, but they are going to be moving, but they are open to the public. People are welcome to listen. You hear projects that want to join the CNCF make their proposal. You hear the broad technical oversight group, which is not limited to the people from the projects that are represented. You have them discuss how the industry is moving, what the projects look like. Do the projects have enough vision? Do they have enough adoption? Where do they want to be brought in? And they as the Technical Oversight Committee, guide the technical vision of the foundation, whereas the governing board is way more business. So marketing, PR, budgets, but the Technical Oversight Committee chairperson also sits on the governing board. And we wanted to add more direct project representation, which is where this proposal came in on the for the governing board, to have 2 developer seats on the governing board. There's a whole big long proposal of what the bylaw changes would look like and what the governing board developer seats would require in the doc that I link in the agenda. Is that enough, Joe? It's a bit of waffle.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think it's, we're still all figuring this stuff out, but it's definitely a lot more solid now than it was like a while ago. So thank you.
It is, yeah. So Aaron says the only devil's advocate comment, because Aaron is the devil's advocate. Top level owners are either all from Google, they are not, or Red Hat, they are not, who already have representation on the governing board. Pretty sure there's no way around that though. Wait, Microsoft, yeah, yes. They do, and there's actually a limitation that there can be no more than 2 seats on the board for any one company. So if it turned out that we ended up with multiple Red Hatters or multiple Googlers elected, it would go to the next person from within the voting. So there is some limitation around that is already written into the documents, Aaron, but we are expecting that these developers are acting in their project's interest, that they are not wearing their corporate hats. And we've been pretty good about having those conversations in the governing board already, being able to say like, hey, I'm wearing my Kubernetes community hat when I say these things. I'm wearing my Google hat when I say these things. I sit as an alternate on the governing board myself. So Ehor says top level owners not equal, not necessarily directly involved with the technical bits of the project. I'm not 100% following Ehor, so maybe you want to elucidate?
Yeah, I mean that, so the main requirement for the people from this governing committee is not to be like deeply technical, but to be like more involved into multiple areas of the project, including marketing area, including like any areas that you have discussed. So while people from the top level owners are mostly technical people who know everything about this project from the technical side.
Mm-hmm. So
I'm not against this proposal, but I'd like to
mention
to
that.
make it more clear, yeah.
No, that makes sense, and thank you. The actual title for these board seats are developer board seats. So it is actually focused on the technical people from the projects sitting on the governing board, offering that different perspective, even though the governing board works on things that are less technical and more broad corporate governance kind of things. So the idea
Much clearer, yeah.
The idea is that it is supposed to be the committers or the developers. So thanks for bringing that up and letting me clarify that as well. All right. Any other questions? Suggestions? Are we happy enough with this as a solution?
I'm not seeing anything in the chat.
Yeah, I haven't seen any negatives. So I've heard some, what about this? Aaron, have I answered enough of your questions? Happy, happy, joy, joy. Fantastic. Oh, and a Ren and Stimpy reference, isn't it? Okay. Fantastic. Thank you all. That is super helpful. And if Brendan hasn't joined, I can give a very short update on the developer survey based on what I read on the mailing lists, which you all probably read as well.
I don't see him in the chat.
Okay. So Brendan had put out a first draft of a survey about a week and a half ago. And I asked Steve Francia from the Go project, who had just done a big survey around the Go community and the Go community health, to look at our survey and offer a bunch of feedback. And he had done extensive work ahead of the Go project survey, including working with several surveying companies and really trying to get to understand survey. So he gave Brendan so much awesome feedback on that list. And we've all encouraged him to turn it into a blog post more broadly because it was super helpful. So Brendan took the survey that he had started with and said, I'm going to go back and rewrite a bunch of it. And I believe he has put up a second draft now of the survey that people can take a look at. And that he is working to continue to move it forward. I believe he's also, he's trying to schedule a governance discussion, but I think that may be gated on getting the survey out and getting some survey answers. But I had seen a suggestion of the 20th, Monday, which turned out to be a holiday, and then I haven't seen a next update for the governance meeting. So, all right. Any questions? Or anyone have any further color that they might know?
A link for the second draft?
I will find that for you, Sully. Thank you. And thank you for taking notes. We really did kind of draft you. That was awesome.
No problem.
Voluntold.
And I thought we had this crazy full agenda today. I was really worried about getting through it all. Does anybody have any questions?
Will we be having this meeting next week if there is a Google No Meetings week?
There is a Google No Meetings week. That doesn't mean that we can't, because we are not all Google. Do people want to? We haven't talked about that. I have a demo scheduled already for next week.
I think, as we start burning down the release, I think it's still useful to sort of use these meetings as a general communication touch point. So
awesome.
Like maybe shoot for a short meeting, perhaps, if people are game, but I think we should at least have a point for people to bring stuff up.
All right.
I think it's probably a decent idea, just to have like an emergency check-in, like on fire before the code freeze.
How about we just have the scheduled Thursday check-in? We don't even have to have it emergent.
Sounds good to me.
Awesome. All right, we will leave this on the calendar. And I was going to ask about the week of KubeCon, but that's still a bit out. Do we want to not have a meeting the week of KubeCon in Europe?
I would be for skipping the meeting that week personally.
What time is this meeting in Germany time?
Anybody close to Germany?
I think it's like 7:30, 7.
Yeah. 7 a.m. Germany.
7 a.m.?
7 p.m.
7 p.m.
7 p.m. Yeah.
Oh, phew.
So we'll probably be at the bar at that point, so.
Right.
Just take that into account.
Yeah.
We're under it.
At the bar. Aaron thinks that would be the best meeting ever. Okay. So yes, let's not have the meeting the week of KubeCon Europe. We should have, how does that fit with releases? Dan, what is the current running planned release date? Because I confess I don't know it off the top of my head.
Yeah, so it should be set for the 22nd still. And I think we should be able to stick with that.
Okay.
What week is KubeCon Europe? I apologize, I'm not in sync with the Europe date.
It is the week of the 27th. So we should finish the release and then everybody treks out to Berlin. Or not everybody, but many of us trek out to Berlin. So that I wanted to make sure that we didn't need this meeting for the release, but it sounds like the release should have just cleared. So we should be good. Okay.
And it's not going to slip at all, right?
Never does.
Yeah.
Never.
Plus, Dan's in charge.
Looks like Ihor had a question. Are we going to have a no meeting week after KubeCon Europe like we did for KubeCon?
Yeah.
I'm open to both. I'm open to both possibilities. We did.
If we'll have release before KubeCon, I don't see any necessity to have any meetings after KubeCon.
Give ourselves a little bit of a break from the trusted and beloved community and then come back refreshed.
Yeah. After bars.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's float this for another little bit, but maybe definitely no meeting the week of KubeCon because it's just going to be complicated and busy. And then talk a little bit more about, but likely not have meetings the week after KubeCon. I think that's a good idea, Ihor. Thank you.
All right. Next up, we've got a PSA from SIG Scale. Tim St. Clair, are you on the line?
That was from last week.
It was from last week. Is it still standing? That was why I left it.
I think at this point, like the PSA went out last week, I can give an update again. There's no update to it other than we know that it exists. So.
Oh, I was thinking we might have a fix update.
There is a patch for it that we can go to, but at this point, like we've already discussed it on a couple of different calls. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, and then there's a KubeCon discount code in the agenda document that offers you a 10% discount code on corporate pricing, and there's also an individual and academic rate for those that are paying for themselves. Let's see, this is another old one. The Kubernetes core definition is underway. Join Kubernetes Dev to Access, and we welcome contributions from anybody. Then there's a leadership summit confirmed for Friday, June 2nd in San Jose at the Samsung campus. And save the date notes will be going out to SIG and key company leads in the next week. I assume that will include a link to the gift registry for the leadership summit.
There will be a gift registry.
It sounds like a wedding thing, like save the date.
Well, we're trying to get more information out faster for some of these events because, including the negative case where we were getting common questions of, are we having another dev summit at KubeCon Europe? And we had talked about it a few months back and determined that we weren't necessarily going to have enough people in Berlin to try to pull that together. So I'm trying to send out information as early as we have it. So now that we have gotten a date confirmed, we're now working on the invite list, and that's going to be SIG leads and then probably the top 5 companies that are contributing, maybe a little bit more. I want to pull in leads from each of those, technical leads from each of those companies who are working on those projects. And we will be addressing many of the project governance and the project vision and direction and conversations, including, I suspect, the biggest conversation is going to be how do we get more chopping wood and carrying water done? And is there a need for us to enforce or more than just expect contributions that are for the broader project health as opposed to just feature work. So that's going to be, I suspect, the nut of the topics that we discuss. So we will also be generating some of the agenda publicly so that everyone in the community has ways to weigh in and get these conversations discussed if there are burning issues from each of you. So. So Brendan is actually joining. So he says that he will be able to give us another moment of an update on the survey if we're willing to stick another moment.
I am personally willing. I will allow it.
Does anyone have any questions? There were questions in in the chat here. Kubernetes core definition details. Oh, there we go. What are the key parts? So Solly was answering that. Thank you, Solly. What are the key parts needed to call something Kubernetes? Part of the core discussion is also to lead conformance tests and to get to a space where we can say this is Kubernetes certified or Kubernetes inside, for lack of a better description, so that you can, so we can have a set of common expectations from something that is considered to be Kubernetes. We've seen more distributions and more packaging of Kubernetes, and we want to understand and be able to manage what it means to be Kubernetes in a way that is consistent in order to make sure that we have very good end user experiences. So I developed on Kubernetes at my last company, and now I'm trying a different flavor of Kubernetes, and it behaves completely differently, would be a bad experience. All right, so did Brendan successfully join us? Curses, I will keep tap dancing. Does anyone have any questions? No questions. Really, we've answered all of them.
Amazing.
I know. It's stellar leadership, Paul.
What can I say? I do what I can.
All right. I see Brendan having joined, or I see his window.
Yeah, you don't want to see me.
Okay, you got in that late.
Brendan's in witness protection.
Yeah, I'm in the trees. I've been running from the Ewoks. Yes. Do you want to do the survey?
Yes, please do the survey.
Awesome. So I don't know how many people are on Kubernetes Dev, but I put a draft of a community survey out there, and then I got a tremendous amount of really high quality feedback from Steve Francia from Google. So thanks to him for that. I then refactored the survey. I think it's ready to go unless anybody has any last minute questions or things that they think it's not covering. It's a little tricky. Sorry?
I think we just echoed.
All right, just someone news. So I'm gonna, I'll mail it out to Kubernetes Dev. So even if you don't always check Kubernetes Dev these days, please check today. Go find that survey and please take it, because it's the first kind of like attempts to gauge how the community is feeling about the project and the process that we've done, actually, which is kind of shocking, honestly. But I'm glad we're doing it now. And I think that will help really shape some of the discussions that we're having, because I think sometimes these discussions take place in little echo chambers or little, the people who are interested in. So please, is there a link to the survey on Slack? I'll put it on Slack, but you don't actually have to be on the mailing list. The Google group is public, and so if you just search for Kubernetes Dev, you will be able to find it. But I will put it on Slack as well, although it's a more transitory medium than the Google.
I would suggest that everybody join Kubernetes Dev, and even if you set your mail preferences to don't send me mail, that at least means that you get access to documents that sometimes are otherwise private that get shared to Kubernetes Dev. So it'll just make your life easier if you do that.
Yeah, I think that if you're taking the time to come to community meeting, probably Kubernetes Dev is actually pretty low volume. So even if you just set it to digest and have it deliver once a day, it's pretty good. Oh yes, and I will put it on Kubernetes Dev Announce as well. Although it's both lower volume and lower participation as far as I can tell so far. But everybody should join that too, I guess.
More public service announcements. Join more mailing lists.
Join more mailing lists. Right. We promise to spam you less. So that's about it. So big props to everybody who helped refine that survey. Obviously, we will publish all of the raw data when it comes through as well, so that people can do their own analysis and things like that. So, and maybe we'll even do a blog post.
I think we should blog post and announce, as well as a close date for the survey, and put that on Dev.
Okay.
And
yeah. Do you want me to do a blog post, a quick blog post to announce it too?
If you've got space, that would be awesome.
Sure, I can hack something together.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be much.
I'll send it to Bob, right? To her.
Yep.
Bob, all right, I'll send it to Bob and get him to queue it up. And I figure we'll leave it open for a couple weeks. It's set to only allow one response per logged in user, so we shouldn't have worries about people overvoting or anything like that.
No. It's a good community. We don't do that.
Yeah, I don't know. I heard a lot about illegal voting. No. Anyway,
I was registered to vote in 2 states.
Yeah. exactly. All right, that's it from my side. Thanks for your patience. Sorry, I was late.
Is your governance conversation going to wait for this to close, or are you going to move ahead with that?
Well, calendar being what it is, I think maybe we will wait for that. Maybe we'll try and schedule something, but certainly it's going to be after the close at this point, because the 20th was the day that I proposed, but that's a holiday everywhere in the U.S. So yeah, we'll try and schedule something for later, I guess.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks a lot. Well, that's it for our agenda for today. Any last minute announcements, comments, etc.? All right, great. Well, thank you everybody for joining. Have a great day. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Paul, for hosting.
You're welcome.